Kickstarter, the glorious home of overpriced card games and undelivered expectations. It seems we've finally reached the point where the general understanding is a crowdfunded project is about as sure a gamble as a slot machine. Remember Under the Dog? No? Exactly. But there was one recent example I considered an exception when WIT Studio launched a crowdfunding page for a feature-length animated adaptation of The Girl from the Other Side. A new animation project by WIT Studio in human ex-girl fantasy. Now that I think about it, that's a pretty popular theme. Though it's usually a bit more intimate. For this project, they had already secured the funds to finish it, but were asking for some additional money in order to polish up the animation and get the word out. It's also interesting because I feel like I see more and more companies nowadays basically just using crowdfunding as a roundabout way of advertising a product they were already going to sell. You see, it's different this time. I'm a part of a movement. We're really making a difference. So I was a bit more hopeful since it was basically guaranteed to be finished, the staff seemed competent, and it was also the exact same team behind the 10-minute short that is essentially a proof of concept for this film and also my favorite anime of 2019. I may be a contrarian, but that's actually just it. Personally, I really love watching projects that push the boundaries of animated expression beyond the norm. It's why I enjoy watching independently produced animation, where artists don't have to be held back by the long-since standardized animation pipeline. Even if that means watching 3 minutes of flashing lights to get a taste of a new experience. When Spider-Verse came out, I was losing my mind because I couldn't believe that we finally got a big studio to make a CG film that isn't just trying to be Pixar. There's literally infinite potential for the way something can be expressed in animation, so whenever there's a hint that we might be getting something new, I get unreasonably excited and really annoying to anybody that I'm talking to. Sorry. The fascinating thing to me about The Girl from the Other Side is that while it has the backing of a full studio, the directors Yuutaro Kubo and Satomi Maiya both come from the background of short-form, highly stylized animation. Crazy for It and 8 Seconds are insane and awesome and absolutely not what I would expect from the type of person getting studio backing. I don't know what demonic ritual was responsible for convincing the production committee to sign off on this, but I still have both my kidneys if you need to run it back. Just let me know. So I backed the project, got my Blu-ray, remembered I don't have a Blu-ray player, definitely bought one and didn't just torrent it instead, and I finally got to watch what I'd been so excited for, and it is really good. Asterisk. So since we're talking about The Girl from the Other Side, should I explain the plot from the other side of my room? So basically, there's this lost little girl named Shiva who gets saved by this big demon daddy. What? He's kinda hot. She takes to calling him teacher, and he's trying to get her back to society in this world where there's a curse spreading through touch that gradually turns everyone into mindless demons. Something tells me N95 isn't gonna cut it on this one. From the very first moment, you can tell this movie is going all out with the looks. It put on its Sunday best. It dressed to the nines. Another clothing analogy. There's this trippy as hell opening scene with paint on glass animation, and throughout the entire film, there is that slight boil of the coloring and line work, which is done by redrawing the same frame multiple times, with those very small imperfections giving it a little wiggly effect, which is pretty rarely seen outside of short films, but gives everything a unique liveliness. The whole experience was a seemingly infinite treat for the eyes. And then I finished it, and it occurred to me that perhaps having a directing-writing duo who, as far as I can tell, have never been responsible for a story over 10 minutes might have been a minor faux pas. Looking back at my notes, it seems almost every single word of praise or note in general is about the visuals. It's insane how genuinely nuanced and human the character animation is for how stilted and awkward the dialogue ends up feeling. And that's with Jun Fukuyama and Die Takahashi in the leading roles. I might be bad at remembering, but even I've heard those names before, so they must be important. I also think it might have been a bit of an issue of casting because as great as Die Takahashi is, she sounds way too old for this character. I just can't not hear a fully grown adult woman trying her damnedest to not sound exactly like one. It works in the case of a Takagi or Megumin, considering the type of shows and characters those are. But not only is our protagonist here even younger, the tone is also a lot more grounded, which I would think would call for a more realistic performance. Yeah, I know, Megumin isn't realistic? That's crazy. Even if it wouldn't have been at the same level of technical skill, I actually think having a real child actor would have done wonders for conveying Shiva's naive curiosity and imbuing in the audience that same desire to protect and see her succeed that Demon Dad that the teacher feels. We're genetically hardwired to want to protect kids. It's basically a narrative cheat code. But before you get too up in arms over my scathing review of these Seiyu legends, it's not like the writing is doing the voice actors any favors. I don't want to make this video about the manga, because it isn't, but they cut stuff from the story with all the precision of a blind butcher doing brain surgery. So many key details that contribute to making the relationship of the main two characters feel substantial has been cut. And in fairness, it's trying to adapt a lot in only 70 minutes, and I think if it had a full 2 hours, a lot of my issues could have been amended, but it's also paced with the economical sensibilities of Wall Street bets. Most of the dialogue is extremely straightforward, which I find fascinating because, to the opposite extent, the animation is able to showcase incredibly complex intent. I'm tempted to say it would have worked better without dialogue, or at least with a lot less of it. I mean, the prior proof of concept I loved so much didn't need any, and to be honest, I like it more. I mean, seriously, with how much talking the hands were doing in this, they might as well have had the whole thing in fucking sign language. Drawing hands, let alone animating them, is like the de facto point of complaint for artists. They're hard to draw. And this movie comes along with a 20-second long continuous shot where the only visible point of character acting is a hand, and it looks fantastic. It's like they're trying to make me feel inadequate. Not hard, to be fair. The character animation is an endless marvel. I definitely get the sense they use more reference footage than is normal for anime because the motion is incredibly lifelike. I never felt a character was simply going from point A to B. There is always a clear sense of motivation to each motion. There's this almost minute-long sequence with a completely locked off camera that's nothing but pure, concentrated, beautiful character acting, and I want it injected straight into my veins, dirty needle and all. Okay, I need to stop. I think everyone is falling asleep. But look at how they show the slight weight of this tiny pocket watch. It's so small and yet it still feels like a tangible object. You might be thinking, what's so great about that? And I know I've mostly mentioned smaller details, but that's because to me these tiny but incredibly powerful decisions are an even more apparent sign of a great animator than those super crazy and easily clippable ones. But the girl from the other side has those too. I both don't want to spoil the climactic moments and also want to share them with as many people as possible because they're so good. Especially when the characters are in their own heads, it really uses that as an opportunity to kick the abstract expressiveness up to 11. And I wouldn't say it does it just to look cool, though that's probably part of it. The visual expression is always motivated by the narrative, and often through those visuals manages to kind of make up for where the narrative fails to convey all the information I think is necessary. The intricately detailed backgrounds, textured illustrations, use of blocking and strong contrast means you can click just about anywhere and have a gorgeous frame, and then press play and have a gorgeous scene. Seriously, I mean, look at that. This movie's so cool looking, it makes me feel like a kid watching a Ghibli movie for the first time again. No, I didn't mean that one. Look at this scene where you can see the teacher reach his hand out towards Shiva, pull back at the realization he can't touch her, and redirect to pick up the book. It doesn't sound like much, but that's exactly why I appreciate it being there. These tiny little bits of characterization are everywhere in the movie. In the shared isolation of two people who are abandoned by the world around them, that emotional theme of the desire for connection is conveyed masterfully through their body language. I sincerely hope that everyone who is responsible for making this project look the way it does has a long career ahead of them, because the amount of love and care put into the visuals really comes through. And I also hope that they're not underpaid and overworked for that love and care, but it's the animation industry after all, so I can at least hope. Yo Mappa, nice new desks. I'm sure your animators will enjoy sleeping under them. Now before I wrap up, I should talk about one more thing. I've only mentioned one side of the audio experience after all. The soundtrack and general sound design, which are a lot like a bag of chips with too much air. What's there is good, but it's a lot more empty than it should be. I know the characters are supposed to be isolated, but I was still listening to music during quarantine. The OST is piano-driven with an impressionistic flair. It's not the second coming of Ravel or anything like that, but it's still easy on the ears. But I really could have done with a lot more of it. Skimming through, my rough estimate is about 18 to 20 individual tracks of music used, and a lot of those don't even last as long as a Christian trying to read the Bible. After the opening sequence ends, there's a full 7-minute long stretch without any background music whatsoever. And with how straight the dialogue is played, there's very little going on to keep your ears engaged. If it was just a silent film, we'd be fine. I'd put on some breakcore, it'd probably be pretty sick, actually. When it's at its best, it is really good. I just want more. Which describes a lot of my feelings towards this movie. The girl from the other side is worthwhile for what it is, but ends up being inseparable from the glimpse of something far greater that it gives. Just like if your child ends up being a YouTuber, no matter how famous they are, you can't help but be a little disappointed. What it lacks in narrative, it makes up for in artistry, but if one side didn't need to do the heavy lifting, this whole experience wouldn't require so many gosh darn qualifiers. At the very least, the presence of a central theme alongside the intrigue it borrows from what it's adapting prevent it from feeling entirely shallow, but in the same way as when you swim to the far side of the pool and your feet still reach the ground. Sure, I'm wet, but I'm not as immersed as I was expecting to be. Don't clip that first part. To better contextualize how I feel about the movie, even if it didn't end up being an all-time favorite like I thought it might be, it'll still probably be one of my favorites for the year. So, give it a watch if you can, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'm gonna awkwardly stare into the camera while the end card comes on screen.